So, if you've been following my podcasts, you know why I do them. I enjoy making these episodes because I learn so much while researching them. And I hope you are learning something too. So, I listen to the news a lot, but I have to admit sometimes I don't fully understand what they mean or how certain things work in practice. For example, when I hear that the ICC or the International Criminal Court wants to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, I stop and think, what does that actually mean? In the real world, how can an organization like the ICC arrest the leader of a country? What powers do they really have? And how does this process even work? I'm Mikael, and this is what I learned today. The ICC didn't appear overnight, so it came after decades of debate, political struggles, and many lessons from human tragedies. We'll start in the 1940s. The world saw crimes like never before. The Holocaust, mass killings, forced labor, and wars of aggression. After the war, Allied powers, after World War II, Allied powers created two special courts, the Nuremberg Tribunal in Germany and the Tokyo Tribunal in Japan. Now, these courts tried top military and political leaders for three main crimes. Crimes against peace, which means planning and starting illegal wars. War crimes, which are breaking the rules of war, like killing a prisoner. Crimes against humanity, which are large-scale attacks on civilians, like mass killings and deportations and genocide. For the first time in history, leaders were judged not by their own countries, but by an international community. And I don't think we fully understand how special that is. I don't think we fully get that this is the first time in human history that justice was being played out by other communities outside of their own, right? I am an American, and I can be tried in The Hague in the Netherlands because of a crime I did wherever, right? So the Genocide Convention of 1948. So in 1948, the UN, or the United Nations, passed the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. So, as we know, in 1945, the Holocaust, right? So this is coming after the Second World War. It made genocide a crime under international law and promised punishment for it. People already talked about a permanent international court. But during the Cold War, tensions between the US and its allies on one side and the Soviet Union and the allies on the other side made it impossible to agree. So remember, the US was huge, but the Soviet Union was huge. They couldn't agree, so it wasn't going to happen. After the Cold War ended in the 90s, old tensions and new conflicts broke out throughout the 90s. Crazy. In the 90s, the world saw terrible violence again. For example, in the former Yugoslavia, wars in Croatia, Bosnia, and Kosovo brought mass killings, ethnic cleansing, and systematic rape, right? And then in Rwanda, in 1994, around 800,000 Tutsi and moderate Hutu were murdered in just 100 days in a planned genocide. So what did the UN do? The UN responded by creating two temporary courts. The first, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, or the ICTY in The Hague in the Netherlands, and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, or the ICTR in Arusha, Tanzania. Now, these courts showed that international justice could work, but they were limited to certain time and places. The world still had no permanent court. Because of these experiences, 1998, representatives from 160 countries met in Rome. On July 17th, 120 countries voted to create the ICC, or the International Criminal Court. The treaty they signed was called the Rome Statute. The ICC officially began on July 1st, 2002, when 60 countries had approved the treaty. So for the first time, the world had a permanent court to try individuals for genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression. So how does it work? How does it work in real life situations, right? So the ICC is based in Hague in the Netherlands. Now, it is independent from the UN. It has its own judges, rules, and prosecution. So when can it act? It can act when the crime happened in a country that has joined the Rome Statute. Remember, we talked about that, 1998, the Rome Statute, 120 countries, right? Then when can it act? The second is when the accused is a citizen of a member state or a member country. So if you're part of a member state or a member country, you can be prosecuted. The third is when the UN Security Council sends the case, even if the country is not a member. So the UN says, hey, ICC, investigate this guy in this country. He's not a member, but go investigate that. And then there's what is called a complementarity rule, which means that the ICC only acts if the country's own court can't or won't act. For example, if trials are delayed for political reasons or the justice system is broken. Think about a dictatorship, or think about a coup, or think about military leadership. There's no trial, there are no courts. The ICC can step in. And one more piece of information is the ICC can't judge crimes before July 1st, 2002, and can't try anyone under the age of 18 at the time of the crime. So this is what it has, right? I'm going to just repeat some of this stuff again. Crimes happen in a country that joined the Rome Statute of 1998. The accused is a citizen of a member country, or the UN Security Council sends a case. Remember, they can act in countries that can't or won't act. For example, if trials are delayed for political reasons or the justice system is broken. Think of the dictatorships, think of countries ran by military leaders, so on and so forth, and cannot try any cases before July 1st, 2002, and anyone under the age of 18 at the time of the crime. So we know how they act, we know what powers they have. Let's talk about real cases and like what have they done since 2002 with this, right? So here are some important cases. Thomas Lubanga Dailo from the DR Congo, the first ICC conviction in 2012, guilty of using children under 15 as soldiers, and he's serving a 14-year term in prison. Germain Kataganga from DR Congo, guilty in 2014 for his role in an attack that killed more than 200 people, 12 years in prison. Ahmed Al-Faki Al-Mahdi in Mali, 2016, admitting to destroying ancient monuments in Timbuktu, 9 years in prison. Now, this was the first ICC case about cultural heritage, meaning if you destroyed something or architecture or a statue or painting or art from a country, you could be tried by the ICC. Omar al-Bashir, Sudan, arrest warrants in 2009 and 2010 for genocide in Darfur. First sitting head of state wanted by the ICC. Sudan hasn't handed him over. It's fair to note that the ICC has no, let's say, muscle or military muscle. They can't just go into a country and take someone. The country that person is in has to give them to the ICC. And so it doesn't have military teeth to do a lot of stuff. Your Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto Kenya, they were charged over post-election violence in 2007 and 2008 that killed over 1,000 people. The case didn't develop because of lack of evidence and no witnesses. And let's just do one more. Vladimir Putin, Russia. Arrest warrant in March in 2023 for the deportation of Ukrainian children. Russia isn't a member state. Remember, we talked about that earlier, but the ICC still acted. So he has a warrant for his arrest. So if he goes to a country and that country agrees, they can put him in handcuffs and send him to The Hague in the Netherlands and try him for the crimes of stealing children. So what does the ICC mean? It just means that some crimes are so serious that they're a crime against everyone. It sends a clear message. No one, not even a president, is above the law. But here's the problem. And I told you this earlier. The ICC has no police. It relies on countries to arrest suspects. If countries refuse, justice can be delayed for years or never happen at all. And the criticism, so that's a fair criticism. Let's talk about more of them. The ICC is important, but not perfect. Biased against Africa. Most early cases were in Africa. Critics say it's unfair. Supporters say many African governments ask for ICC investigations. Major powers, not members. So just to remind you, 160 countries, but of those countries, the US, Russia, China, and India aren't part of the ICC. Think about that. And I told you the third time, There are no police. It relies on other countries to make the arrest. It can't do it. Slow and costly. So another main criticism is trials take years and cost millions, and some without any verdicts. And last but not least, the politics. Critics say political pressure sometimes affects the ICC's decisions. So political pressure to not try someone or not go after a case. I gotta tell you, the ICC isn't perfect, but it's kind of historic, right? It's humanity saying, it's us saying, these crimes are so serious that they concern the international community. It affects us all, no? From a historic point of view, the most important step towards justice in the last 100 years, not because it is going to be successful, but because it just exists. The idea that we have a court, an international court, that says, no, what you're doing in this part of the world is not okay, and you are going to be accountable for that crime. I think that says like the evolution of humanity, or the evolution of our politics in our way of living. It's not perfect, but I better understand it. I understand more. So when they say stuff like Netanyahu, ICC is going to Netanyahu to arrest Netanyahu for genocide, you understand why he's still president. And he's traveling to other countries, and countries aren't willing to do anything about it because they have no military police and they rely on the country to turn them over. So I better understand that. So when I hear that on the news, I'm like, the ICC, right? Anyway, I hope you learned something. I learned a lot. I thought it was pretty interesting. Thank you for listening. I'm Mikael, and this is what I learned today. Bye.